Hello friends, welcome to Dr.RAjeshverma's YouTube channel, and in this particular video we'll be discussing something about memory. The two things we are going to focus upon is the definition and the meaning of memory. However, we'll be talking about the various historical background, various theories, and various models given by the various psychologists and behavioral scientists. Along with that, we'll be discussing something about the characteristics of the memory as well as the major brain areas that contribute in the memory. Now let us move. Let us start with the meaning of memory. Retaining and recalling of information over a period of time means there are two important components here in this meaning. You have to retain the information, and that retained information has to be recalled over a period of time after lapse of some time. So that particular process is the meaning of your memory. So if we little put more deeply understand what memory means is, we have a cognitive storehouse in our brain, and that stores the representative informations where the frequency of recalling strengthens its retention. So let us discuss these technical words here in terms of memory. First, with the representative information. Dear friends, one thing I want to make it very, very clear is that whatever we think, we see, or hear, taste, or touch, or smell through our sense organs, that stimulus which is activating our sense organs. Suppose something object we are seeing, some beautiful flower we are seeing, or some tasty dish, very attractive smell is emanating from a dish. We are smelling that smell. In that case, neither the dish nor that object or the flower is traveling physically to your sense organs. Then what is it traveling? These your sense organs are very expert, and they play in a role of expertise. They pick up the representative information from that particular stimulus, and that information travels to your brain areas, various brain areas, where the frequency of recalling, the more frequently you recall that information, the more the chances that the information will retain in your brain. This means the frequency of retention, or that is recalling, strengthens its retention. Then, in simple words, the more you practice, the better you recall it after a long period of time. So this is uh, the meaning of the memory. Now let us summarize this meaning. Simple in you say 5 words: information remembered from the past. What information you have stored previously in your brain, your cognitive storehouse, if you are able to remember it, that is the exact meaning of the memory. Now let us define it in 2 3 context. First, memory is the means by which we draw on our past experiences in order to use this information in the present, as per the Sternberg 1999. What it says that uh, at the present times, when you receive some information, when you have some information, the relevancy of that information or the usage of that information are dependent upon the past experiences. If you have past experiences related to that information, so you can use that information better. So that is the definition given by the Sternberg in 1999. So let us go for the another definition that I could glean from the Britannica.com. It's a good and beautiful information definition, rather I can say. What is that? Memory, the encoding, storage, and retrieval in the human mind of past experiences. Though they have focused memory or circumscribed the memory in as far as the human beings related, but memory is also found in uh, animals, and some studies has suggested that memory is found in plants too. So that is a different or separate topic. We'll be focusing here only about the human beings. So what Britannica.com say about the memory? They say that there are 3 major components of memory. That is encoding information that comes to your brain. That is first in the first stage, that is encoded. The second one is storage. That information gets stored in your brain or the cognitive domain or cognitive storehouse, and finally retrieval. Whenever we need that information, we retrieve it. And so this whole process or all this activity is termed as the memory. So these are the two major definitions. You can find lots of definitions in various books, and by and large, the old definitions are almost similar as I discussed here. Now let us go for the introductory part. That is historical part of the memory. One important thing here is why we study history. So this is a very particular question various students they put up to me when we take the when discuss some new concepts, because there are three important uh, points that we must remember while we studying some new concept. That is, what the meaning of that concept, how it has been defined, the definition of the concept, and it is historical background. Because these are too important. Meaning and definition, you could understand why we need to study it. But as far as the history is concerned, various students put up the question, sir, why we need to study history of these concepts? So, dear friends, here I want to make my point is because history decides our present. Where we want to go, that has to decide by from where we are coming. But where coming means our historical background. So, in that context, so the future of any concept, how that whole new studies will be taken off, uh, or how new research will be, how that new direction will be, that will be decided by the historical, from where that concept or the context started. So in this point of view, we'll be talking about the some historical background of the memory. So as you know, all know, Hermann Ebbinghaus, the German psychologist, or you say uh, who attempted in 1885 to write and study a scientific account about the memory. Scientifically, he studied memory. He was his own subject. Very interestingly, he never asked for other people to join his laboratory or join his attempt to understand the memory. He experimented on himself. That's why known as he was his own subject who invented very important concept, that is nonsense syllables. What are that? These are the three-letter words that consonant. They have one sequence: consonant, vowel, and consonant. These are three-letter words, and these are used to study the phenomena of memory. One interesting point I'll let you know here, that after more than 100, you call it the 35 years, we still uh, use this nonsense syllables. This means technology has developed to a new high, but still we are using the nonsense syllables invented or discovered by the great Hermann Ebbinghaus, who worked on the memory in 1885. Let's move to the next step. William James, also known as the father of American psychology, in 1890 used introspection method to categorize memory into primary and secondary types. He categorized that memories of generally two types: primary memory and secondary memory. The primary memory contains the immediate information, what we have received immediately, and secondary memory contains the indirect or permanent information that is stored in our system. So he categorized into two types: primary, which lasts for few seconds and holds information in our consciousness, and secondary memory, which has unlimited duration and can be brought to consciousness if desired. So if you need that, you need to recall the stored information, then only that information can be put up in the your consciousness or your awareness. But that part uh, is named by William James is the secondary memory. So let us move some further. In 1932, Frederick Bartlett suggested that memory is an active process rather than passive process. So it's a very interesting thing is talk about the memory. We all came to know, or we all were in the doubt that previous to him, that memory is a passive process. Today also various people think that it's a very passive. There is no change, no dynamism found in memory. But he proved with his experiments. He used verbal material, stories, and text to support his claim. According to this approach, the stored information undergoes various changes and modifications over time. So there is a qualitative difference in what was initially memorized by us and what to retrieve or recall later. Let us take an example of this. Suppose what we are discussing right now in this video lecture is you are just gaining some insight about the memory. So this is the point first here. So you try to memorize these points because you are worried about your uh, annual examinations. When after a left period of time when you appear for examination, when you recall the information, you will interesting to note that you don't write the words as you learned from this lecture, whereas you pick up some concept from this lecture and explain the lecture in your own words. Why is that? Because as per this Bartlett is Hyperbolus model, that memory has undergone various modifications over time. You couldn't remember each words as has been suggested in this video. So that proves that memory is an active process rather than a passive process. This is a various example, various stories also. If someone asks you to tell a story, you read some story in past 2 3 days back only, or some 6 months back only, and when you tell the story to someone, you leave some words or some points from that story and add from your side. Why? Because the memory is active process. That is a changes that takes place in the memory. So there's a difference. What we memorize and what we recall. There is a big difference. Here I want to assure you students that where students are in this dilemma that while marking the examination, we accord marks to those students who write as per the book. No, that's not a good approach. Whereas the teachers, if you're a good teacher, they already suggest to the students that the main focus is the you understand the concept and explain that concept in your own words rather than mugging up writing down this you are engaging in the rote learning and just you mug up everything and you vomit on the answer sheet. That is not required here. In if you take a good example from the Ramayana, then very Indian epic where Guru Vasishtha, when the Ram and Lakshman and all his fellows were on the last day of their in the Gurukul, that Guru Vasishtha said that, uh, dear students, you all received the information, knowledge, wisdom from me. But when you go to the real life, do not apply this information as is told by me. You have to take the reality situation in context and use your intellect, use your own wisdom to and then only apply this information. This means nothing is permanent or nothing is concrete. We have to use our own understanding on our intellect. Same is the case here. So while writing examination, understand the concept and explain that concept as per your intellect, as per your understanding. That will fetch you better marks. Remember, a good teacher always suggests this. Let's move to the next. In 1965, Wu and Norman suggested a new model which explained the relationship between primary and secondary memory that was been suggested by William James in 1890. So he doesn't that Vaughan and Norman never explained what primary memory is, what secondary memory is. They focused their research on the relationship between these two types of memory. According to this model, a piece of information first enters the primary memory, which may be remain there, or if rehearsed, then enters secondary memory as forgotten, as this diagram suggested. See, this is the stimulus, this enters, the information enters to your primary memory first. If there is no rehearsal, the memory will be gone, it will be forgotten. If there is a rehearsal, if you repeat it, if there is a mental rehearsal, then only that information will shift to the secondary memory. This was the focus of the study of the Wu and Norman model. Now let us move to the very interesting model and widely used, that in 1968 Atkinson and Shiffrin proposed a three-stage model of memory, which is generally known as the information processing model. According to this model, memory has three systems. See, this is very interesting, or three stages, that is sensory memory, secondary memory, and long-term memory. According to this model, when information first enters the sensory memory, selective attention moves information into the short-term memory. We call it the STM, where it is held while attention continues. That is, attention means your rehearsal continues. If the information receives enough rehearsal, it will enter into the long-term memory. See, this is the three-stage model suggested by the Atkinson and Shiffrin. So, wherein that the sensory memory has a huge capacity. Suppose if I ask you to just climb up to your roof roof of your house and just give a glance to the all the things which you can observe and count down. In that case, what you observed is countless things, various houses, various colors, various water systems, various DTS antennas, various birds are flying, people have kept their dried their clothes on the cloth line, people are moving on their roof, and something different kinds of things you'll observe that. But does they all stay in your brain? No. What does it that what that information that stays in your brain? The information where you focused your selective attention. Suppose you see a beautiful bird was sitting on an antenna. You focus, so this is a bird I've seen first time in my life. So this is a very beautiful bird. Now your attention is selected. Your selective attention, you focus on a particular bird right now. And that particular information now has first entered into a sensory memory. Out of that, where we have applied our selective attention, from there that information has entered in your short-term memory. So while coming down, you keep what a beautiful bird was, what were the color, the sound, everything was so nice and so attractive. So these things you are keep on repeating in your brain while you're coming down from the roof. At that time, that is known as your rehearsal. So that information from sensory memory to it has gone into the long short-term memory. From short-term memory, you are rehearsing it. It will transfer into the long-term memory. See, this is the model. Short sensory memory, selective attention, short-term memory. You have to rehearse it. Rehearsal, it will transfer into the long-term memory. Further, after that, after so many years, also you will be able to recall that, you will retrieve that information because that information still lies in the LTM or the long-term memory. This was the Atkinson and Shiffrin model suggested in 1968. Now, in 1974, Bradley and Hitch they carried out very interesting experiments and they suggested a new model of short-term memory. They focused on the short-term. This model claimed that STM has three systems, that is central executive, phonological loop, and visuospatial spatial sketchpad. See, STM has three major components. You can just look at this model. This input, the input that information this travels to your sensory memory. Uh, Almost lots of information gets decayed here, and where you put the selective attention, that particular information will travels to your short-term memory. In short-term memory too, that information first reaches to the central executive. As in our homes, our mothers are the central executives. They decide what to do and how to what is to be prepared and what are the major decisions of the house. So take it in that way only. This is central executive. From the central executive decides whether that information has to be transferred to the visuospatial sketchpad or to the phonological loop. If that information is related to audio information, that will be transferred to the phonological loop. Or if it is some visual information or something other information that is have connection with the vision, then it will transfer to the visuospatial sketchpad. And here, from that, if there is a rehearsal, continuous rehearsal to maintain this information, then the central executive will transfer the information to the long-term memory. So dear friends, that was the model suggested by the Bradley and Hitch in 1974 as far as the short-term memory is concerned. Now, these were some historical background introductory part of the memory. Now let us focus some characteristics of memory. First, the practice rehearsal is the key in retaining and recalling information. More you practice, better your ability to recall information. In Hindi, there is a couplet or you call it a doha. Karat karat abhyas ke jadmati hosh sujaan rasri awaz jaate shil par parat nisaan. Means the more you practice, the more that rope moves over a stone, that tender rope makes a permanent sign on the stone. That is the result of the practice. So the more you practice, more you rehearse information, the better it will be retained in the long-term memory and better it will be in recalling it. Then the second part, memory forms with the aid of perception, attention and learning. And interestingly, it influences them too. So these are the 3 points, that is perception, attention and learning. These three components, these three psychological concepts or variables are, are instrumental in forming a memory. Once that memory is formed for some object, that memory itself influences these three. So very interesting phenomena. Memory plays a dual part. It first it forms with the help of these people only, these three concepts only, and finally memory start interfering or start influencing these three important variables, psychological variables. So it's a very important characteristic. Third one is the memory can be momentary or lifelong. Lifelong means just from your birth to the point where you dissolve on the oblivion. So that is known as your it has a that is important characteristics. It can be momentary or lifelong. Then the fourth one, it's a very dynamic point here, that is memory manipulates information too. Is it such? Yes, that is proved. That has been, I was told you in this lecture too, that memory is an active process, not a passive one. So this has been a very interesting thing. Why? Because information manipulated by the memory. If you ask, you tell a story, and that story you learned previously 6 years back, you manipulate some of that information and you present differently what you learned. This is a very interesting phenomena. In Hindi, we call it the namak mirch lagana. Then the next characteristic is the memory is adaptive and flexible. It's indicative that memory is manipulates the information, and it's an indication that it is adaptive as well as flexible in its approach and storage. Then comes the forgetting is the flip side of memory, just opposite. If you want to remember something, that is your memory. But if there is something we generally forget, and that is the just opposite side of the memory. That generally happens with our academic material. Academic material become very difficult for us to retain it. The reason is because we don't focus on the academic material and do not give some important contextual cues. Oh, that word I used, that will come in the next characteristics. And if you study whatever you study, if you anchor your academic material with your emotions, with your some context, then only you will be able to retain that information for the longer period of time and able to recall in the future whenever it required. It required only in the assumption purpose as well as in your real life too. Then comes the memory solidifies in long-term storage system for which it may take days or years. So this doesn't mean that whatever information you took today and you rehearse it lots of time and it purely goes into the long-term memory immediately. Though it will travel into long-term memory, but it takes there even days and even years to solidify there. It means it takes lots of time to get accommodate there. Uh, so this is also one of the important characteristics of the memory. Then comes the next characteristic where it says that cerebral cortex, cerebellum, and the hippocampus are found to have a significant and important role in the memory storage and processing. If there is a question comes, what are the two major or the three major brain parts that play a major role in the storage and processing of the information as far as the memory is concerned, then you have to answer it just cerebral cortex and the cerebellum and the hippocampus. Next comes the ninth characteristics. Forgetting is more influenced by interference than decay. Though, dear friends, this particular characteristics belongs to the forgetting, not the memory. But forgetting is the part of or just flip side of memory. That's why I explained it here. Means forgetting whatever thing we forget, information we forget, that is resulted from the interference of the new information rather than decay. Suppose if you are watching this video and lots of information, these info traveling to your brain. So what we happen is we could have forgotten the right now the historical points which I discussed earlier. Why? Because the new information that is coming to you continuously is interfering the previous information and throwing it out, or maybe may not be throwing out. This is a very crude word which I used, but this is the major reason for the forgetting rather than the decay. Decay means uh, not able to retrieve information over a long period of time. So this is important point, dear friends, for as far as your studying planning is concerned. You have to plan according to this characteristic of the memory, that if you want to retain the academic material for longer period of time, you have to ensure that particular specific materials only travels to your brain and you have sufficient rehearsal for that. And the last characteristics is the contextual cues aids in the memory making. What are the contextual cues? They have conducted a very interesting beach experiment. So, dear friends, I'm not going to describe what that. You can just Google it and you'll find it. He says that whatever we remember, the environment which in which we remember the information. If the retrieval environment is similar, we'll be able to recall the information better. So this is the contextual cues, means the cues that aid in your memory when it is retained, and these, as if these cues are present when you're recalling that information, then the retaining and recalling will be better, and almost 40% better. That is suggested by the beach experiment. It's a very interesting experiment, and you can just google it and study it. Now the last point we'll be discussing is the what are the brain regions, major brain regions that play important role in the memory. First one is a hippocampus. You can just see here. This is a blue part. This is a hippocampus. The transfer of information from STM to long-term memory. From short-term memory to long-term memory, hippocampus transfers the information. The second one is the, as I told you earlier also, cerebral cortex. This one is the cerebral cortex, and more specifically prefrontal cortex, that is the green area. This is the green area. These play a very important role in the memory. The medial temporal lobe, this is so different. This is your temporal lobe. Inside the brain. This is not your temporal lobe. Inside this brain is your temporal lobe, medial temporal lobe, the inner part of the temporal lobe. See, both sides of your temporal lobe, the inner part is expected to play a role in the declarative and episodic memory. So what are the new two terms, declarative and episodic? We'll be focusing when we're studying the long-term memory. These two parts will come there, that is declarative and episodic. We'll be discussing very detail with good, beautiful examples as when that part comes. So the fourth is amygdala, plays very important role in processing and memory of emotional reactions. You see, where there are various incidents, various stimulus and various events, they provoke your emotions. At that time, if you are remembering that particular information, if I ask you, when you got the last time slap on your face from your father or your mother or your teacher, so you will be remembering that part. Oh yeah, I got that information when I was in 12th class. Why that? Because that slap in your at your face you received uh, just provoked the emotional reactions in you. That's why that information is stored in your brain, in long-term memory. So who is responsible for that? That is the amygdala. This is the pink part. Getting my point? So this is a very important point. Next comes the basal ganglia system, which is important in the formation and retrieval of procedural memory. This is another type of long-term memory, that is procedural memory. Do you know how to ride a bike? You all are very much aware about that. You know how to ride. But if I ask you, do you know how to ride a bicycle? Yes, of course you are. But you didn't practice for the last 2 years, 3 years, but still you can ride that bicycle. How? Because that procedure to ride that bicycle is ingrained or permanently stored in long-term memory. So for that riding a bicycle, the next time you ride a bicycle, you remember that basal ganglia system is responsible for the formation and retrieval of procedural memory. And the sixth is the temporal lobe. This is the temporal, I told you, processing of semantics in both speech and vision, and plays a key role in the formation of long-term memory. Means whatever the long-term memory information we store in that, that is the handiwork of the temporal lobe. Getting my point? So dear friends, these are my references. This today we discussed meaning of memory, definition of memory, some historical background. Then we came about the characteristics of memory, are major brain parts that play a role in the memory. These are my references. You can cross check them and you can study more if you like, and you must study. So dear friends, next discussion we are going to focus on the stages of memory. What are the important stages through which the memory, that information travels and forms the memory. So dear friends, all this is all about memory, meaning and definition from my side. So if you have any question, you can just write to in my comment box, or you can email me at verma@yahoo.com. And if you like this video, share with your friends or the individuals who love to study psychology. And if you dislike something about it, just write to me. I'll be happy to appreciate your comments. Dear friends, once again, thank you very much for watching this video.